Econo. I'm an icon. Econo. Make room for an icon. Econo. I'm an icon. Econo. Put your hands high for the icon.
Y'all know things don't change. Still on top of my game. The light being green, I'ma ride this lane.
Good morning, everybody. Happy New Year. Welcome to 2026. We're going to kick off 2026 with a bang. Welcome to the Ignition News, your unfiltered source for news about what's happening in America and around the world. We started the Ignition News late 2025 with the ambition of bringing you the truth in reporting with the billionaires capturing social media, the news, and all of the information. We wanted to get right into your inbox with fresh updates and the truth, stories about what's happening without all of the filter, the control of the billionaire class, or candidly, the United States government. So let's kick it off. I'm so happy that you followed the show, by the way. I really want to say thank you. It's a lot of work to put the show together every single day, but we are growing like a weed. That's an inside reference, if you know the reference. We're growing the Ignition News like a weed. It's a great experience. And I just want to say thank you for everyone who's supporting the show. You can support the show, by the way, by following it on your favorite podcasting platform. And do go ahead and listen to an episode and leave a comment. Say, I like the show. I like your blazer. Happy New Year. Whatever works for you. Let's get into the top stories today. We do have an important update. Before I begin, I do want to talk to you about another why behind the Ignition News. We know and recognize that a lot of the way news is delivered to you is algorithmic now, and it's designed to hijack your amygdala to make you feel terrified and or to make you just feel and scroll. That's why we're doing long form news with your daily news updates, and we're taking the amygdala hijack down. We're taking the amygdala hijack down just a little bit. So let's get into a tragic story this morning. We're going to go all the way to Switzerland, and it's unfortunately breaking news from Switzerland. What we know right now is there's about 40 people that have died and 115 have been injured after a devastating fire tore through a crowded bar in a luxury ski resort town. This happened during New Year's Eve celebrations. The fire broke out just after 1:30 a.m. local time at a bar called Le Constellation. More than 100 people were packed inside celebrating when witnesses say a bartender carrying a staff member on his shoulders held a lit sparkler or candle in a champagne bottle that ignited the wood ceiling. Within seconds, the entire bar was engulfed in flames. What's particularly tragic, friends, about the story is that the bar had a basement nightclub that was accessed only by a narrow staircase and a single narrow door. So what that means is when the fire started, unfortunately, people could not escape, and people who were trying to escape were crushed by the people trying to rush out. The Swiss deployed 10 helicopters, 40 ambulances, and imposed a no-fly zone over the resort. Hospitals across Switzerland are treating severe burn victims all the way from Geneva to Zurich, as well as sending patients as far as Italy, for example, Milan. So the victims come from multiple countries. Switzerland's new president called this one of the worst tragedies our country has ever experienced. Investigators do say that this was not terrorism. It appears to be a catastrophic accident, but they're looking into whether the venue had adequate safety measures. Obviously, that's a tragic story and a reminder, of course, that life is fragile and fleeting, and every moment actually really, really does count. We had, 40 people ringing in the new year, and tragically, obviously, our thoughts are with the family members impacted in that, and it's a good reminder. Every day, every second counts. Let's get on to local stories. You probably heard a little bit about this, but I do want to talk about it here. There is a major update out of Minnesota. The Trump administration has just frozen Minnesota child care funding. That's going to affect thousands of families starting today. The Trump administration just froze all federal child care payments to Minnesota. That is a $185 million a year budget, and it helps an estimated 19,000 children in low-income families to get daycare services. Of course, this is because of the now viral video from YouTuber named Nick Shirley. He posted a 42-minute video the day after Christmas claiming he found widespread fraud at a Somali-run daycare in Minnesota. The video has been now viewed more than 128 million times on X. In the video, Shirley visits various daycare facilities and points out that he doesn't see children present, claiming these centers are taking government money without providing services. Of course, what Shirley did not mention was that he visited many of these centers during school hours when kids were supposed to be in school and not at daycare. And at one center he featured had actually closed in 2022. Minnesota officials say others have active licenses and passed recent state inspections with no evidence of fraud. But this did not stop the Trump administration. Deputy Deputy HHS Secretary Jim O'Neill demanded Minnesota Governor Tim Walz conduct a comprehensive audit and froze all payments, not just to the centers in question, to the entire state. It does get worse. HHS is now requiring all states to provide receipts or photo evidence before receiving federal child care funding. So think about what that means in terms of an administrative burden. And we don't even have our American government right now is not set up to handle that kind of volume. So this is certainly going to mean delays in childcare. And obviously, I just want to talk about this. We've been really examining this story here on the Ignition News because there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation happening in this story. And there is real fraud happening in Minnesota. So what we do know is that dozens of people have been convicted in a scheme that stole $250 million from a federal child nutrition program during the pandemic. Obviously, that's very serious. Trump has specifically targeted Minnesota's Somali community throughout this. He called Somalis garbage at rallies. He ended TPS, or temporary protected status, and ICE launched targeted operations in Minneapolis, specifically going after Somali immigrants. One daycare operator interviewed by CBS said she and her staff are carrying U.S. passports everywhere now because they're afraid of being swept up by ICE. When one Somali does something wrong, we all get collective punishment. That's what she told us. Now, because of this unverified viral video, 19,000 children, most of them from low-income families, could lose access to childcare. This is collective punishment. Meanwhile, families who did nothing wrong are also about to lose that childcare that lets them get to work, lets them get food on the table, and lets them stay housed. This is a major problem. It is the combination of two things, and why it's so important that you follow along here at the Ignition News. If you're not following us yet on your favorite podcasting platform, please do subscribe. I want to let you know that this is a complex story that contains both disinformation and propaganda from the GOP and from the President of the United States. But there is also serious, real, actual fraud that happened in the state of Minnesota. And something I got a lot of criticism for talking about yesterday was the fact that Tim Walz, as governor of Minnesota, did oversee the time period where we know at least $1 billion of fraud happened. 1 billion with a B. And now federal prosecutors have estimated that it could be up to $9 billion. 9 billion with a B. Now, here on the Ignition News, just as we talked about yesterday, we're going to take this story one day at a time, one fact at a time. One day at a time, one fact at a time. Now's not the time for disinformation that impacts and harms children and families. So what we know right now, of course, is that there is fraud, that the government has overreacted by punishing 19,000 families, and that this is clearly being used as a targeted attack against Minnesota's Somali population. This is a developing story, and we'll continue to provide you with the accurate and updated information as we have it. I'm going to hand it over now to a special report about the United States Postal Service. Thank you.
All right, and now we're going to head over and check out an important story about the post office. The United States Postal Service postmark change could possibly threaten your voting rights. This is a story that is flying under the radar right now, but it could have massive implications for voting rights, tax filings, and any deadline-driven mail you send. As of December 24th, the U.S. Postal Service changed how it applies postmarks. Previously, a postmark showed the date you dropped off your mail. Now it shows the date your mail was first processed at a regional facility, which could actually be days later. So why does this matter? Well, because 16 states and D.C. count mail-in ballots after they arrive after Election Day, as long as they're postmarked by Election Day. That postmark has been considered reliable proof of when you mailed it. That's not true anymore. Under the United States Postal Service's new definition, Delivering for America plan, they've consolidated processing facilities and reduced pickup schedules. 26% of post offices are now within 50 miles of their processing center. Another 26 are between 100 and 500 miles away. Many post offices used to send mail twice a day and now only do it once in the morning. So what this means is that you could drop your ballot off in the mail on Election Day, but it may not get postmarked until the day after, which means that it won't count. The Montgomery County and Maryland Board of Elections were warned in September that this could increase the number of ballots rejected. And it's not just ballots. They could be cash returns, Medicare documents, court filings, or any legal deadline that requires a postmark. USPS says you can still get a same-day postmark by going inside the post office and requesting a manual postmark or by using certified registered mail. But think about who that affects most. people working multiple jobs, people who can't take time off to stand in line at the post office, and rural voters who live far away from their nearest post office, elderly people with disabilities. This is a quiet dismantling of the voting infrastructure. It doesn't ban mail in voting, it just makes it harder, more uncertain, and more likely to fail. And it most disproportionately affects those people who rely on mailing voting the most. 4 states have already eliminated their grace periods for counting late arriving ballots: Kansas, North Dakota, Ohio, and Utah. The Supreme Court is set to decide this term whether states can even count ballots that arrive after Election Day. This is a story to pay attention to. The assault on voting rights doesn't always look like people getting turned away at the polls. Sometimes it's just as simple as a technical change to the mail processing.
All right, thank you for that special report. Obviously, I just want to point out that, the big concern there with the change to the USPS postmark period, this is not a technical change to the post office procedure. What this is it is a targeted attack on America's election infrastructure. As you know, mail-in voting is becoming increasingly popular. So let me just spell out what's happening with this news update. It's very important, and it's what you need to know, especially if you rely on mail-in voting. So obviously, Republicans and this president in particular are not big fans of mail-in voting. So what they've done is they forced through a new change at the post office, and that change is that basically your mail is no longer post office when you drop it in, or postmarked when you drop it in the box. It's postmarked when it gets to a regional processing facility. So what this specifically means is if you drop in your mail-in ballot on election day, it may not be counted. So quick tip for you there. What that means for you in upcoming elections is you want to make sure you get your ballot. You want to make sure you get ballots in early. You want to make sure you get your ballot in as early as possible. And if you do need a postmark, walk into the post office, get the manual postmark, make sure it gets there on time. So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our first show of the new year. It's great to have you. And speaking of the new year, on the Ignition News, I want to talk about probably my favorite story of the day. One more big story here. It's Zohran Mamdani. It's really exciting, actually. Yesterday at 12:01, Zohran Mamdani was sworn in as the 112th mayor of New York City, making history as the city's first Muslim and first South Asian mayor. And at 34, he's the youngest mayor in over a century. Mamdani, a Democratic socialist and former state assemblyman from Queens, defeated Andrew Cuomo twice, first in the June Democratic primary, then in a general election where Cuomo ran as an independent. He also beat Curtis Sliwa. This was a really special campaign, and Mamdani was virtually unknown when he launched his campaign. He was initially polling in single digits, but he ran on affordability issues that resonated with New York voters: free city buses, universal public childcare, city-run grocery stores, a rent freeze, and rent-stabilized units, a $30 minimum wage by 2030. This election saw the highest turnout since 1969, over 2 million votes. Young voters turned out in record numbers. And what this shows us is that when you put these policies on the ballot, people get very excited. Very good stuff. Cuomo called him the most dangerous option for mayor. The race became defined by racist, xenophobic, Islamophobic attacks, particularly after 9/11 references and terrorism accusations. But Mamdani won with 50.78% of the vote in a 3-way race. In his victory speech, he didn't shy away from his politics. He positioned New York in direct opposition to Trump. Now comes the hard part, of course. Mamdani has to get to work. He's now the mayor. He's no longer the mayor-elect. Here's what I find interesting. Mamdani is not pretending politics is about anything other than power and whose interests get served. He's not running away from being a Democratic socialist. He's very clearly saying, these are my policies. I know they're going to be hard to implement, but they are made for working people. And it needs to fundamentally change. Now, of course, whether he's able to deliver this for the city of New York is going to be watched not only around the country, but by the president and indeed the entire world. This is truly a groundbreaking moment for democratic socialism and social democracy. And obviously, here on the Ignition News, we're big fans of Mamdani. I think at the bare minimum, you got to say this was the duly elected mayor of New York City. He's got ideas and vision that the people of New York decided to give to him. Let's give him a chance. Let's give him a chance to implement that change. And now New Yorkers are going to get to see what happens when someone openly puts progressive policy on the ballot, says no to the establishment, and tries to forge ahead. So let's go ahead and move on to the next story. Jack Smith reveals that Trump admitted losing in 2020. Well, what does this mean? This is A pretty big story. Welcome to the Ignition News, everybody. The next story should really be getting a lot more attention than it is. On New Year's Eve, the House Judiciary Committee released the full transcript and video, which you should watch, by the way, of former special counsel Jack Smith's 8-hour deposition from earlier this month. And buried in that testimony is quite the bombshell, by the way. The president privately admitted that he lost the 2020 election. Smith was asked if Trump ever acknowledged that he knew he had actually lost the election, and Smith's answer was yes. He pointed to statements the president made. It doesn't matter if you won or lost the election, you still fight like hell. And can you believe I lost to this fucking guy? That was referring to Biden. Think about that. So while the president was whipping up his supporters, claiming he won the election, he knew all along, as we're now learning, that he did in fact lose the 2020 election. Jack Smith explained that when Trump was told a fraud claim wasn't true, he didn't stop making that claim. The president kept pushing them even after he was told and it was proven that they were lies. Jack Smith also said Rudy Giuliani didn't believe his own fraud claims. When Smith's team interviewed Rudy Giuliani, he disavowed a number of the claims that he made. So what's wild about this, obviously, is that the president of the United States, everyone knew that Trump lost the election. Everyone knew this. But you had all of these people going around in service of overturning the election. And since the president returned to the office, he's fired the prosecutors responsible for this, the FBI agents and support staff who worked on Smith's team. He's called for Smith to be prosecuted, and this is what political retribution looks like. But now we have his own testimony. Now Jack Smith says under oath, by laying out the evidence, that Trump knew he lost. Trump is a loser, but he lied about it anyway. None of this is going to result in accountability right now. He is the president again. He pardoned the J6 rioters, and he's firing anyone involved in investigating him. But now the evidence is part of the permanent record. Speaking of the president, he gave an interview to the Wall Street Journal where he has admitted to his health issues that the White House has been lying about. Trump confirmed that he wears compression socks for swollen ankles. Yeah, he's wearing the cankle socks, though he says he stopped wearing them because he didn't like them. He admits that he has chronic venous insufficiency, a condition where the veins in his legs can't properly carry the blood back to the heart. He reveals that he takes 325 milligrams of aspirin daily, 4 times the normal preventative dose, and his doctors have told him to take less, but he refuses to because he's a little bit superstitious. This obviously conflicts previous reporting from Carolyn Levitt, who repeatedly claimed, by the way, that the bruising on Trump's hands is from frequent handshakes. And now he's talking about putting makeup on his hands. He also clarified that the medical scan he had in October was a CT scan, not an MRI. And Trump insists he has very good genes and is in excellent shape. But, it kind of reveals that he doesn't do a lot of exercise beyond his obvious golfing and texting at 2 a.m. in the morning. At 79 years old, Donald Trump is the oldest person to serve as the United States president. His diet largely consists of hamburgers and fries, and he won't walk on a treadmill because he said it's not for him. And this obviously matters because pretty much the entire Biden presidency was dogged by rumors of the president's health and mental health as well. Now we've got the president out in the open admitting that he puts makeup on his hands to cover up for bruises, that he's got cankles, and he's taking a ton of aspirin every single day. The truth, it seems, is being exposed. Welcome, everyone, to the Ignition News. I would remind you that we do broadcast the show live on TikTok. Hey, everybody. Good to see you over on TikTok. But if you really want the full show, you're going to want to go over to Spotify, YouTube, Substack, or Apple Podcasts and subscribe to the Ignition News. If you can't find the show, just go type theignition.news into your web browser and get subscribed to all of your latest updates. The best thing about the Ignition News is we are not bought by the billionaires, so we're delivering the truth right to your inbox. Thanks, everybody, for checking in. Let's get to the next story. The Trump Kennedy Center continues to implode. Multiple performers have canceled New Year's Eve shows after the board voted to add the president's name to the building, now calling it the Trump Kennedy Center. The jazz group The Cookers pulled out of their New Year's Eve performance. Saxophonist Billy Harper said he would never even consider performing in a venue bearing the name that represents overt racism and a deliberate destruction of African American music and culture. Dance company Doug Verone and dancers canceled their performances, and that cost them $40,000, by the way. Verone said the decision is financially devastating but morally exhilarating. What a hero. What a winner. They join a growing list of cancellations. Lin-Manuel Miranda pulled Hamilton. Shonda Rhimes resigned from the board. Opera singer Renee Fleming stepped down as an artistic advisor, and artists including Issa Rae and Rhiannon Giddens have canceled their shows. This is a measurable impact to the agenda of the Kennedy Center. It's the Kennedy Center, by the way. It's the Kennedy Center, and it will always be the Kennedy Center. But here's the thing I think that's, that really resonates. White Christian nationalism and MAGA seek to remove all forms of culture because they know that culture, art, music, and performance are essential to critical thinking. They know that diversity represents a threat to their white Christian nationalist agenda. And candidly, they simply don't have a deep bench of artistic talent in MAGA. They just don't. And so what they're now experiencing is the consequence and accountability of their hatred. And candidly, it seems that they don't know how to respond. It seems that they don't know how to respond. I mean, they've got that guy that plays, that Kevin Sorbo that used to play, what's his name? He used to play that superhero. So they got him. Who else do they had? They had Hulk Hogan for a while, I guess. Who else do they got? A growing list of B-list celebrities, C and D-list celebrities. My apologies to B-list celebrities everywhere. I deeply apologize. But the D, E, and F list celebrities are starting to show up at the Kennedy Center, I guess. They're going to have to start inviting high school choirs over to the Kennedy Center to perform. But, that's what happens when you try to cancel. When you have cancel culture, what happens is you end up canceling real culture. That was a good line. It just came with it right as I was going. That was a good one. I got to tweet that out later. Threads it out later, whatever you say. The president banned all LGBTQ plus events from the Kennedy Center, including pride celebrations and family-friendly drag shows. He gutted the board and installed himself as chairman, and then obviously slapped his name on the side of the building. But, there's one thing we know for sure. Whenever Trump puts his name on a building, it just kind of gets worse from there. Previously, the Kennedy Center hosts about 2,000 events per year. It was the nation's busiest performing arts center. They obviously have the National Symphony Orchestra, the Washington National Opera, and now it's just bleeding talent. Everyone's fleeing. And this is what happens when you turn a cultural institution into a political weapon. You destroy it. You destroy arts, humanity, and culture. One last note on art, humanity, and culture. One of the reasons that fascists, Christian nationalists seek to sort of constrain art, to bury art, to destroy art, is because art is a critical pillar of critical thinking. The best artists in the world are strong critical thinkers. When they use their critical thinking skills, critical thinking is the antithesis to fascism. People understand and can see when they execute critical thinking that the administration is failing, that their agenda is failing, that their hate-driven agenda is not serving the best interests of the American people. And now the polling is starting to tell this. Young men and women are fleeing from the Republican Party. Christian nationalism is on the decline, not the rise. Erica Kirk and Turning Point are essentially gutting organized religion across the United States of America because now that many Americans are seeing what this sort of megachurch gospel fraud actually looks like out in the open with the fireworks, the glitter, and the fake Christianity, they say, no, we don't buy it. The nation and the country are not buying what Erica Kirk, Turning Point, and the Trump administration is selling. And now artists are fleeing. And I think that's a good sign, everyone. That's a good sign on our first day, the very first show of January. Welcome, everybody, to the Ignition News. It's been great to be here. I'm so happy. Our New Year's resolution for 2026, I guess we don't really do resolutions, but our goal is to become one of the top news outlets on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on YouTube Podcasts as well. And we also have the show on Substack. So here's the thing. I'm pre-visioning it. You're going to have yourself a wonderful 2026. I know 2025 was a challenge for a lot of people. Some people had a great 2025, but most of us did not. So I'm pre-visioning it. You're going to have a great 2026. This is our year, everybody. This is our year. Thank you, everybody, so much for tuning into the very first episode of the Ignition News, your unfiltered, uncensored news source. And yes, friends, this is a propaganda news station. We're propaganda. There's nothing wrong with it. We're propagandizing affordable healthcare, affordable living wage, access to, if your tooth hurts on New Year's Day, you should be able to go get that taken care of. If you want to go to school, you should be able to go to school. If you want to get a good job, you should be able to get a good job. If you don't want AI polluting your air and destroying everything, you should be able to have that too. And so the Ignition News is a propaganda news outlet. And the design and end goal of our propaganda is a few things. Number one, to defeat Christian nationalism in the United States of America. Number two, to tell the truth. Number three, to be your source for unfiltered news, the truth in an age and an era when the truth is increasingly hard to find. The truth is, my friends, even though at times it looks dark, Even though at times it looks like there is doom on the horizon, we are winning. The administration is failing, and we will prevail after all. We'll see you on the flip side. We'll see you tomorrow, January 2nd, 2026. You can't just watch the show on TikTok. You got to go over to Spotify or to Apple Podcasts or go to Substack or go to YouTube and click follow on the Ignition News. It takes a lot of time, energy, and effort to put these news broadcasts together. So please consider following. Please consider leaving a comment on your favorite podcast platform, The Ignition News. And if you can't find us, just go into your web browser and type theignition.news, and you'll find us on all of our favorite platforms. Everyone, Happy New Year. I'm sending you the best energy. Thanks for watching along, and thanks for following the show. This has been your January 1st edition of the Ignition News.